Are you going to ask me about influences?
Grant Murray is an enigma. He has many Instagram accounts encompassing all aspects of his life, from daily life to his artwork. As an artist, Grant uses whatever tools at hand to create the vision in his mind. This is Grant Murray on location. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Good to spend some time with you. Really amazing location we went to up there. The amphitheatre, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time at the bottom of the amphitheatre looking up. You're the opposite, it seems. What gets you up there all the time?
Well, I go to both. Sometimes I'm at the bottom, but I find the top more interesting photographically. Whereas down the bottom you've got the big wraparound thing, which is amazing, amphitheatre. But at the top you see the pillars, and that's more to my interest, particularly in cloudy weather, where the city is obscured, so the rocks are isolated from the background, and you don't have the distraction of seeing roadways and buildings.
Very much your style on at least one of your Instagram pages.
Yeah, got a few.
Yeah, you do have a few. So your main one, the Grant Murray, you are focused on one particular object and seems heavily vignetted, sometimes out of focus, but it's definitely that one object that you're focusing on. Has that always been the case for you?
Well, thinking back to the 35mm shooting days in the 1980s, yes, really, I think so. Individual items, isolated, have always caught my attention. And my eyes lock onto something, I say, whoa, wow.
How do you even see that? When you're looking at this huge landscape, how do you lock onto something so minuscule and obscure?
You can see, you could be looking at the big picture, the grand, dramatic landscape, but your eye just sweeps past something and you see it in an instant. I think you've got a database in your brain from pictures you've seen and photographs you've taken, and sometimes it's often matching up, even if it's unconscious, to something you may have seen in the past. Like there's a Japanese photographer, Yamamoto Masayo. He often just isolates one or two items. There's a heavy contrast, but there's one item, or just a couple of items, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need. It's like a haiku poem. Just one moment of purity and beauty and serenity.
Amazing.
Everything else could be in turmoil around you. It could be a blizzard.
Yep.
But I'm lying horizontally on the ground in an uncomfortable position with the rock under my left ribs here, just trying to get the right angle and holding my breath for the shot. Because often when I'm shooting on this one, it's f20 or 22, 1/40th of a second. And you have to hold the camera very steady at that speed.
Do you go out with the intent to shoot a particular series? Like, do you have an idea in your head of the kind of photos you want? Or do you have a pool of ideas that you just keep chipping away at and adding to over time?
Yes, the latter. The projects I'm working on, I know where they're going to go after I've taken it. When I'm in the field and I see it, I know which project it's going to go into.
Do any crossover? Or are they
Yes,
very distinct?
yes. In my Mount Wellington collection, I do have some which I'd be quite happy to have in one of my other projects. But because they're taken on the mountain, I'd leave them in the mountain project. Though, for example, the one with the circles in the water, that could go in either project, because it's a Zen moment.
When did you start looking at things in that way?
Well, I think I had an inclination before I actually started shooting like that. A lot of my earlier photography was just straight landscape, standard type of thing. But I think there was influence of other photographers. I think I started posting that sort of material less than 10 years ago. That's the highly modified stuff with the sepia toning and the grain and the heavy vignetting.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily like clean images. I like lens flare, I like blur, I like ambiguity, and I like surprises. And I don't print very much, and if I were to print, I wouldn't print about any larger than that. With the sort of photographs I take, I often blur the photograph in post or add grain to it.
So it doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter. I'm more influenced now by pictorialism, which was popular in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, where the emphasis wasn't on documentary realism, it was on the ethereal. It's just beautiful sepia pictures which aren't clear, there's blur, things are indistinct, and it's more mysterious. Magical photographs, it's art. I've only started really looking at the history of pictorialism over the last few years. Edward Strachan, Alfred Stieglitz. I want to do shots which look like that. They had big cameras, so you have very shallow depth of field quite often. With these tiny little sensors, you don't have very shallow depth of field. But if I could achieve the look of the pictorialists, I'd be very happy.
I remember I had to scan some of my grandfather's old images, so when they arrived from the UK in the 50s, I think, a lot of the photos, and I thought it was a problem with the way he took the photos, but it was actually just the camera. So the middle was in focus and everything else just blurred worse and worse as it went out.
I love that.
Yeah. And I honestly thought something was really wrong with it, but that was the technology of the day.
Yes. I would like to get some antique lenses which do just that, because they're fabulous. I'm going to go into some antique stores in Italy.
Oh, yes.
Over there.
Yeah.
And I'll be looking out for some lenses from the 1800s.
Is there something back in your past that has influenced the way you shoot now, or is it completely independent?
I've been a bushwalker all my life, so that has a strong influence in what I do.
Yeah.
I'm strongly drawn to beauty in nature. Ever since I first got a camera, I've been taking pictures of my trips. And my style has just changed over the years and developed to better represent what I'm interested in at that time and in the environment I find myself in. What I'm doing hasn't really changed. I'm out there bushwalking or camping or scrambling on rocks, but how I want to represent what I'm doing has changed over time.
Yeah. We were talking earlier how you are drawn to mountains in general, and obviously this one is close at hand, so you're up there an awful lot.
I've always been attracted to mountains. I had some ambition to be a mountaineer during my school years. In fact, I wanted to be a mountain man after watching Grizzly Adams. But mountains have always been of interest to me. I like cold, wild places where there's snow.
Yeah.
And so, here we are.
Yeah.
Tasmania.
Is there a particular place on the mountain, this mountain in particular, that you're drawn to the most?
There are quite a few places, a handful of places I return to many times. I also try to explore places I haven't been to. Off-track walks, of course. But I keep returning to the same spots, which I never get sick of because there's always something new, whether it's a different weather condition, summer or snow in winter. I can always see something from a different perspective, a different angle, and it's always got something new to show me or something I haven't noticed before, something to teach me. Never get bored. I can go back to the same spot multiple times. It's comfortable, yeah. I go to visit old friends up here, the rocks.
Yeah.
I know them by name. Mount Wellington is like a sculpture park in an art gallery. That's how I view it. These are like Henry Moore sculptures, Barbara Hepworth. They're gorgeous. And I never tire of looking at them. I see them in different weather conditions, winter, summer. They always have something new to present to me. There are some superstars out there. They're superstars in my eyes,
Yeah.
which I love their work. Keith Carter is one of them, Texan photographer. Quite different to what I do, but love his work. He's been an educator, a photography educator at university for many years, and it's well worth looking up his YouTube presentations for something of the philosophy of his style and just photography in general. Brilliant presenter, very gifted speaker. Yamamoto Masayo is a Japanese photographer. He does beautiful small work. He prints predominantly, prints about that big, puts them in his pocket for 6 months, rough up the edges, and presents them that way. He doesn't go big, he doesn't need megapixels, small printing. Ragnar Axelsson is an Icelandic photographer, documentary photographer. I love his work. Does predominantly black and white. Henry Cartier-Bresson is another documentary photographer. Strangely enough, does influence my work in landscape. Don't ask me how. Have a look at his work and see if you can work it out.
Okay.
There's another guy who does music videos, Rocky Schenk, I think his last name is. He not only takes a photo, but then he paints on it afterwards. Very moody, very dark, mysterious, and each image has a whole story going on, and you wonder what it is. Anne Brigman is another pictorialist who does beautiful work. I've got one of her books, and she did a lot of her own photography. She did selfies of herself, set it up. I don't know how she set it off though, because she was working with old cameras.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to know. I've never thought about it before. Anne Brigman, worth looking up. I took a photograph on a disposable camera when my brother was about 6-8 months old. He's 3 years younger than me, so I must have been 4.5 or something.
Okay.
And he's sitting on a swing with my grandfather. And that's the first camera. I think my parents bought that for me,
Okay.
as far as I remember. And there's only 2 or 3 photos which came out of that session. I don't know what happened to the camera, but no other photographs were taken on it after that. My next camera was a little Kodak Instamatic.
Oh yes.
With a very distinctive button with a click.
Yep. And the narrow film canisters.
Yes, yeah. Pop out the back, clunk, there it goes, and pop it in. And then I went into Nikons after that. No, I had an Olympus 10, OM10.
Oh.
That was my first SLR camera.
How old were you then?
Teens.
So you've had various film cameras and still have film, don't you?
I've got a Horseman FA 4x5 field camera, which I used for quite a number of years. Either 4x5 sheet film or a 612 rollback. That was the main one. I've also got some little Holga cameras, which I'm yet to use.
Yeah.
But I've got 35mm and 120. Holgas, as far as I remember, are a cheap Russian camera, and what comes out of them varies considerably from camera to camera. So you could have 3 Holgas exactly the same. The photograph you take on each of those could be wildly different.
Amazing.
With lens flares and light leaks and all sorts of fun things. Crappy lenses.
Sounds like fun and lots of disappointment.
Well, it's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I'd like a Leica.
You'd like a Leica.
Yes.
Yeah.
The monochrome would be nice.
Isn't that why they're called Leicas?
Yes. So I can be happy with lots of cameras, you know.
Yeah.
It's not the camera, it's the photographer.
Yes.
So the camera which I carry most is the one in my pocket, and it can take photos which you'd miss otherwise, because often the moment happens 10 seconds and it's gone.
Yeah.
I've got a number of separate accounts on Instagram. One of them is just all photographs from phone, and I do tend to take them on the phone as well as the big camera when I'm hiking.
Do you carry this whole
3
selection?
lenses, always got these 3 lenses with me. This is my favourite lens. It's a 10-20 AFP Nikkor. I like it wide for the sort of things I do, particularly up here on the mountain, because I'm always shooting rocks, and I like to get close with the rocks to emphasise the sculptural form, but it also includes the background.
Yeah.
And I can bring things which are right in front of my eyes into the foreground, and they look huge, and you can see what's in the background as well. Next is my little kit lens, which is fabulous.
Yep.
18 to 55. I usually have to change it if I'm doing some of my isolated objects, my Zen photos, onto this one because that's too wide.
Yep.
And then I've got the 55 to 200 zoom, which I like to blur the background on things.
How many megapixels is the camera?
I don't know, 20. Around 20? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not important. With the sort of photographs I take, I often blur the photograph in post.
Okay.
Or add grain to it,
Yep.
noise.
So it doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter.
Is there a photographic technique that took a long time to master?
There are photographic techniques which I am yet to master. They're the ones which I'm trying to work out. But I still haven't worked it out.
Okay.
Trying to get the effect which I'm after with the gear which I have.
Is there a time when you're not thinking about photography?
Most of the time.
Okay.
It's a sideline.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I see things all the time as I'm going about my day-to-day activities, working on the farm or whatever. I see things, and usually I bring out the camera in my pocket to take a snap.
Yep.
But there's never a day goes by when I'm not seeing things which I want to take a snap of.
Yeah.
All the time,
That's good.
much to my partner's annoyance. I'm walking down the street, I say, oh, look at the symmetry in that. Or look at the way that's lined up. I just got to stop and take a snap.